Welcome back, 2021. Good to be here. I'm here with Sean. You won't see him right now. We'll cut away to him in a bit. And I'm Sam Cuttress, and we'll be walking you through Origin, installing hardware. So this is a common theme. It spans a bunch of different disciplines, fine woodworking, joinery, you name it, hobbyists, professionals. We're going to look at how to make the most of Origin in that realm, how to utilize Origin to do the direct cutting. We'll look at templates, and we'll look at how to get data onto the tool, be it from images or scans or measuring things with calipers. And then we'll walk through all the different modes of how to process that and how to utilize just the regular old Shaper Hub, which we're all familiar with now, hopefully. Sean, do you want to start looking at Shaper Hub and an example of a file?
Yeah, hello everybody and welcome back. So we're going to quickly go over kind of how to get a file into the universe that Origin can understand, which is Shaper Hub. This is kind of a digital world where you can upload files and then the tool can automatically get files off of there into your workspace quickly. So I'll quickly jump over here. And for those of you who haven't seen it, this is Shaper Hub here. This is a collection of our kind of internal projects with premium projects, which are paid, really nice projects. And then the community uploads projects as well. So this is actually, let's just quickly go over what Sam wanted to show, which is how do we find hardware inserts quickly? Well, one is we can search for hardware, and then that'll give us results for anything that matches. And we can also search for very specific results, such as maybe sauce hinge, which is a common thing we would want to do with Origin. And we can see all the types here. And if we click one, it'll actually take us to the page where we can see a little more detail about it. We can click here to see a better preview of the file if it has a preview. And then there's two buttons here. One is Sync to Shaper Origin, and this is the button that will take these files and put it straight into your account, or you can download the files and use a USB file to put them into your tool if you don't have Wi-Fi for some reason. So syncing to Shaper Origin is a really easy one, just a single click. It'll say, okay, these files have been added to your files. Now, if I go up to the top, my Origin files, that file now exists here. And if I double click, I can see that file. Note, we can also delete these files and download them from here. But that's a really quick way to get these hardware files into your Origin files, and then the tool will instantly have access to that.
So yeah, following on from that, basically what we see there, the list called My Origin files, that's both the files that you've identified you're interested in on Shaper Hub, and it's also presented to you right on the tool. So if we cut to the screen here, we'll have a quick look at what that looks like. So I have Origin, I've scanned in my workspace. So you can see here there's just a small panel to work with. And now I can readily bring in under the design menu, I can go import and look for whatever's on my Origin files. So this is my Origin files, as in Sam's Origin files. So this is showing what I've copied across to the tool. So the one in particular I want to look at is a Brusso hinge here. We'll show you what that looks like. So Brusso's a locally made product. You might be able to see that from above, Noah. Yeah, so this is a little brass latch. So pull. This enables me to install this in any. It's often used in really fine sort of woodworking projects. This just enables you to get a better grip and looks really beautiful. So you go onto their website, you can download all the info, and we'll walk through some of the processes of how to take advantage of that later, using either on-tool techniques, or which is no computer required. I could literally install this without using Shaper Hub with just this information here, or even if I was to measure it with calipers. But for the meantime, we'll save ourselves even having to measure it, and we'll look at it based on the Shaper Hub project. So that's been copied to my tool, exactly as Sean just displayed there. And I can select my Brousseau hinge. So you'll notice at the moment, I've chosen that I want to place this file, and Origin's behaving like a big mouse. I can place it anywhere I want on this, we call this a workspace. So you can see where the tape is. I can pinch to zoom in and out, but there's no real identifying info. I've got a little, you can see a pencil mark here. So we could kind of visually place it on that, but I can't be confident I'm not 100% aligned on my workspace. So I'll walk you through the process of creating a grid, and Ted will link to a video that's even more comprehensive. So just cancel out of this and create a grid. He's got a video that's a more thorough walkthrough of the gridding process. So what I'm going to do, this is a gridding process where we use an engraving cutter and just visually align it to a pencil mark. Take our scan, which is Origin's understanding of where it is relative to the tape, and then with grid I can identify either the edge of the stock by just touching a cutter against the edge of the stock, or in this case I'll hover above the surface of the stock and just make sure it's aligned to this pencil mark. So I am just taking my cutter out, undoing the collet, dropping in, I'll come over here, might be easier to see, dropping in the cutter. So this is just the stock engraving cutter. The good thing here is we've got a really fine point we can see and confirm that it's exactly pointing at this, hovering just above the surface, looking at this. Actually, we may not be able to see this in the camera, Noah. Would that be right? Looking through the screen there, yeah. We may not have a good camera to see this process, so I'll just do it quickly. Basically, the linked video will walk you through the idea of I'm doing a grid, I lower the cutter, so you probably won't be able to see this until you look at the video, but basically what's happened is I've hit the green button, I've hit the green button, I've lowered the cutter all the way down to just above the surface, and I'm actually looking underneath the tool here, just looking to see that the cutter aligns to my pencil line. So I'm going to go set depth, I'm going to go centered, so we can toggle for what side of the cutter I'm using to probe. So ordinarily it would be up against the edge of our stock, so we'd use the top, but in this case I'm actually just looking at the physical cutter underneath here. It'll look much like I'm looking at the mark on the screen, but I'm looking underneath. You can't see me off camera. And then we come back, so that's 2 clicks. So that's defined my x-axis. So from this point, my x-axis I know is accurately aligned, and then I do the exact same for the y-axis. Notice I can toggle left, right, or centered, but it's defaulted to center. So now this is getting me a very accurate 0, 0 point here. So we can see now when I go to place my file, we'll do that same import process, select my Brousseau SVG file. Now you'll see it behaves a little differently. I'm snapping to the center point, and you'll notice as I rotate, it's no longer following Origin. So I now know that I'm perfectly parallel to those pencil lines I made. I can then place the file. So it's placed at 0, 0, so now I'm centered on that pencil mark. Keep in mind the visual representation of the pencil mark, it's a bit blurry, so the actual gridding process is significantly more accurate. So if you're wanting to precisely place or align anything, the go-to is a gridding operation. And once again, that linked, we'll put it in the description as well. The linked video will cover that in much more detail. There's a bunch of different subtle techniques for taking advantage of gridding, but it's straightforward, fast, and accurate. So now I've chucked up my 1/4 inch cutter, and every time we redo that, we need to remember to do a Z-touch. I plug in my spindle last and I unplug it first. Whenever I go to change or touch or do anything near the cutter, I unplug the spindle. So back to the cut menu. So we were in design mode for placing and composing shapes. Now we move over to the cut menu, and the first thing to do when you change the cutter is do a Z-touch. Hands off the handles. You can't see here, but I've moved my hands aside. Origin is able to, basically when it's doing a Z-touch, it's measuring the height of the cutter at Z equals 0. So it goes down and it touches the surface of the material with the cutter, and there's a little pressure sensor in the front that detects that slight change in pressure. So basically, so long as this is dead flat, so long as it can see tape, and we hit the Z-touch button, it's going to go down and very accurately measure that, that distance there. So now whenever I enter a value on screen, I know I'm cutting to exactly 3.25 inches there. So I'm going to do 0.25. So I can either type it in over here or hit the preset. And I am going to do an offset. So an offset, you'll notice, I'll exaggerate that. This won't be news for any existing customers who've used Origin, but for the new people who are interested in seeing how Origin works, I've exaggerated it here on screen, Noah, you'll be able to see. So this dark area is the cut channel. That's the area that's sort of following the toolpath that shows what's going to be cut. So if I cut 0, 0, I'm cutting up to the line, to the final dimension of the SVG shape I've placed here. So if I do a large offset, you'll see the area I'm moving is now 0.1 inches moved in from that line. So I'll just do a modest offset. It won't be as visible. So this is 0.01. This is called a roughing pass. So this enables me to clear a lot of material rapidly and then come through, and I'll actually go beyond 0 when I go to install this because the measurements I've put in an interference fit. So it's basically line to line, and this I could get it in with a hammer, but I'd never get it out again. The really cool thing with offsets and Origin is I can come in and revisit this as many times as I like, sneaking up on exactly the friction fit you want. So you can go from a very firm fit to a loose fit to like space for glue or whatever, just by making this offset smaller into the negative values. So let's see here. I've done my touch off. I've got my spindle set on 5. That's a good go-to for, this is just Baltic birch ply. And now we're just going to cut the first pass here. So I'll actually do this as a pocket. This is worth noting. It's going to take 2 passes here. So you'll see the depth is described here, 0.325 inches deep. So my cutter is a 1/4 inch cutter. So you usually don't want to cut deeper than the cutter's diameter in one pass. So I'm going to turn this into a pocket so I can clear out all this area and then quickly do the perimeter later. So let's see how we go here. So 1/4 inch deep initially.
Yeah, so as you saw, I changed the pocket just to clear out all that space first. While you're working on Origin, you're kind of think of it as you're working with shapes. So if you want to do the inside, if you want to cut the outside, if you want to engrave on the line of that shape or clear it all out, you can just change that right on the fly. No need to go back to the computer and designate this shape as a certain type. So, now he's changed it to an inside cut, and it's actually, so now he's just taking a slight pass all the way around the outside. You can kind of see where blue is, he's already cut, and he's right now got about 25% of the cutter that's actually loaded while cutting, and the rest of the cutter is just moving through space that's already been cut. You can see pretty quickly a couple passes, and you know, we're basically have that space totally removed. A little vacuum out and I think
what I've just done here is the roughing passes. So that clears out most of the material, and I don't know if you can see that from the top view, Noah. Yeah, so this is actually smaller than the final dimension I want. And what I'm going to now do is start adjusting those offsets. I can take off 1/1000th of an inch if I want, up until the point I'm satisfied with my final fit tolerance. And then I can just either adjust my file to bake that in, or make a note of exactly the offset that gets me my precise fitment. Usually you'd include that in the instructions with the file. So I happen to know this one will cut very nicely with a 0.005 negative offset. So it's taking off more than the dimension baked in the file. So we'll do that now and then see how it fits.
And the real trick with offsets is just making sure, you know, you can cut the offset as many times as you want and going bigger, but obviously you can't put material back. So as you're moving into the negative territory to make that shape a little bigger to fit something, just make sure you're going at appropriate sizes.
It's also worth mentioning that persists forever. So long as this tape remains in place, I can come back and revisit this project and take another however many thousandths or whatever off. I'm not going to push that all the way in. It actually, it's like a firm fit there. I'll never get it out if I press it all the way in. But it's unlikely you're going to get tolerances like that for these sort of things, especially given you can come back and adjust and manipulate that. So now we're going to move on to, okay, that was cool. That seems like a pretty simple shape. It's great that it's on ShaperHub. I don't have to measure anything. So if I just look up, this is actually the JB766. If I look that up on ShaperHub, I can now install that instantly in, you know, a couple of minutes. But if you're out in the field, this is where Origin gets really interesting. You have your trusty calipers with you, and a lot of hardware you can actually install without needing ShaperHub. So, you know, there is a time when things are placed at very specific locations, or there's a bunch of nested pockets and things like that. And in that case, you know, you're going to want to make your own file or find the file on ShaperHub. But just keep in mind, with a bit of creativity, you can actually get in there and make these files right on tools. So we have some basic shapes, and I'll walk you through a couple of them. I won't cut this one again, but if I was to just measure this, it's like 70 millimeters. Actually, sorry, I'm in millimeters. Brussos are in inches, so 2.75 inches. But basically, all the data is called out there. So bring this over. So we got the length 2.75, 0.75. We can either, you know, find the printout on your phone or measure it with calipers. The one thing that is kind of squirrely in the field is measuring radiuses. And one reason why these Brusso parts are so cool is they're precisely made. So, you know, when they call out 0.125 inch radius on these corners, every single one of them is like bang on that. I've got some versions of that sort of thing off Amazon, and they're obviously just hand ground. So I was worried my file was incorrect. And then when I actually measured the radiuses, they were all just arbitrarily curved, and meant it wasn't nice to install multiple different hinges using the same profile, because all the curves were different. But if we look at my screen here, Noah, I'll walk you through creating that shape that we just showed you live on tool. So I'm not going to regrid. I'm just going to place this to the side. But if I go create, so instead of import is how I would look for files on ShaperHub, if I hit create and rectangle, I can just literally type in 2.75. So that's the width, and then I move over to height, and that was 0.75. And then I do the corner radius, and that was 0.125. Done. Same thing applies. I can choose my anchor point and then place that exactly the same way. So this is effectively the same file. It doesn't have any depth information in it, so I've got to look that up as well. But that's now exactly the same thing, ready to go. This one's a little more interesting. So if maybe we'll look at this. So this one will show various ways of making this, but we'll start with the on tool way, because that's always most compelling to be able to create these things live on tool. You'll notice in design mode I can remove this, and what I'll do is I'll make a new grid. So this is just a arbitrary grid, but for this particular project I do want a grid. So I'll go grid, new, and instead of placing it somewhere precise, I'll just do a quick shortcut. So accept the depth at this height, and then I'll just double click. So that places a grid dead center on the center of the cutter. So it's not accurately aligned rotationally, but if I'm happy, I just want a reference point. It's often a good idea to start with a grid. So let's say this is placed exactly where I want it. Now, if I create a circle, so look at this file. Oh, sorry, not file. Looking at this physical hardware, it's just a matter of creating a perfect ellipse in this case. So this one is in millimeters. So it's 38 by 60. So I've already measured that. I don't need to bore you with me using calipers. So I'll use the big value to create a 60 millimeter circle, and then accept that. Oops, accept that. And then I'll just place it down here. So that's fine, but it's not an ellipse, right? So let's go copy and bring it up here. And then we can do some scale manipulations. So I've turned off the proportional scale. Proportional scale means the width and the height are equal regardless. So you edit one and it will update identically in the other, or proportionally in the other. But if I change this to 38 millimeters, now I have an ellipse. And then we can do the same thing on the back of this, measuring the size of this. So I've got that written down here, 47 by about 20. Keep in mind you can be not sloppy, but you can make the rear pockets much larger than necessary. What I'm saying is don't try to push your luck with like interference fits for the big pocket shapes in behind. They're often done to a lot lower level of accuracy than the precise part on the front. So the key is to get the oval perfect and then have a little bit of slack. You obviously don't have a huge amount. I think you can see in there's just a tiny bit there. But yeah, give yourself some breathing room in the back. So create a rectangle, and that will be 20 millimeters wide. You'll notice here I'm mixing and matching units, which is kind of makes it convenient. Sorry, we'll do it 20. And then height is 40, we'll do 48. And remember that. Now, because I've got my grid already defined, if I choose the anchor point to be centered, I can now confidently drop that right centered exactly where my oval is. So now we can cut this down to, let's see here, we'll measure that. I think it's about, yeah. So if I give it a little, once again, a little more breathing room, you don't want two surfaces to be in contact with your material. You want it to sort of float there. So I'll bring this down to 14 millimeters. That's probably a bit deep to do in one pass. We'll do it quarter, and I don't need to worry about a roughing and a finishing pass because no one will ever see this. So I'll do 2 passes to get down to that depth. Bear with me while I cut this.
Yeah, like Sam mentioned, one of the things a lot of these hardware inserts are built for is kind of a quicker install method where you're cutting a kind of a big space like this, and then you're having the top kind of overlay the top with some extra on the sides. But with Origin, you can actually flush the top down too as well by doing a second pass around the oval that he's going to do after we finish this first part. And same as this one with the other one, he's going to have to go do a pocket as well. So he'll change the type of cut from the inside to a pocket. You can do it before or after. It really doesn't matter. I would suggest doing the pocket first, typically, as it'll leave a little bit of extra room to allow you some extra space in case you go too far out, and then doing a cleanup pass either way. But, it's kind of up to personal preference and how you like to drive the tool.
So we have our pocket all good there. Now, one thing worth noting, if I haven't made this, well, we actually don't need to in this case. There is a little hack. Ted can link to it. There's a tip and trick for if we did this really tight and there wasn't space in the back here, I might need to add a little dog bone detail, which you wouldn't see from the top, but that would mean if the edges of these were really I'll cut to the screen one now. If the edges of this, can you cut to my screen camera? No, yeah. If this point was really sharp and then my cutter rounded over the corner and there wasn't enough breathing room, I would have to chisel out or cut a little extra material here. And there's a little tip for how to do that in the field without having to bake those into your files. So we've made this big enough that we don't need to worry about it. So now it's just a matter of doing the final thing here. So what I'm going to do is convert this one to a guide. So that means I don't inadvertently select it. Not that it matters, but it just makes things simpler. Once I get done with cut elements, I often turn them to guides to avoid, you'll notice they don't select anymore when there's a cut toolpath available around near them. So now I'm going to do this 1.5 millimeters deep, and we'll start with the pocket, and then we'll do the perimeter. So now I'm just clearing out the big oval area.
One of the nice things about pocketing is because it's a free-form operation, you're not following a path. In this case, he's only going to have to clear out a little bit, and the blue will let him know that he doesn't need to go clear out the inside again. And then so after you finish the pocket, same thing, select the pocket and then change it to an inside. If your depth's already set, you can just go ahead and start cutting, and it'll be exactly the same as the pocket.
You get a little bit of fuzz. Now this is line to line, so I'm not expecting this to fit together. So I'll do the same thing and add my tolerance, which will do 0.005. Give it a decent amount of breathing room. But yeah, this is you're really fine tuning exactly how you want these things to go together with the offset feature. probably won't be able to get this out, but that's okay. Subflush. If you can see that, Noah. Oh no, I can. Look, I gotta. I can get it out. Yeah, so that's like super bang on. Beautiful finish there, and all done in the field, no computer. So just showing you the different pathways to creating some of these shapes.
Sam, while you're at here, why don't we just quickly show the dog bone trick with the online
No, good call.
technique.
So I'm going to make my outside line a guide. So this is probably what we're getting at here is a lot of these files, they're not, I mean, they can be entirely defined exactly as you intend to cut them. But the beauty of Origin is that you can actually adjust things and adapt your approach and techniques as you go. So here's one example. If I wanted to mill out that little area in the corner that hasn't been cut, I can just do a 0.03 negative. You might not be able to see that. I'll clear my cut history, and then we'll just, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit on the outside diagonal of that edge. If I was to plunge, Origin would remain right on that corner, that 90-degree corner on the toolpath. So the dotted line is the toolpath, and the little dot is the cutter. So if I plunge and retract in this state, out at 45 degrees from the corner, it's effectively captive. It won't move. So I can confidently know it's going to go down and retract in the same place. So power it up.
And so this is kind of the power of being able to quickly do, specific operations. So we don't actually need to create a circle there or change a file. We can actually just kind of change the offset and plunge every corner. And now that's clearing out just enough room on the outside that a really tight, sharp hardware piece would fit now into that space.
So yeah, as Sean's just said, yeah, if there was more material or it was a closer fit in there, that's often a great way to just quickly get things installed without getting a chisel out, especially if it's not seen. They're not attractive on their own, but if it's behind something, it's a great way to stay efficient. So what are we at for time? What's it? Sorry. Yeah, we can go to the slides now for the create your own section, Noah. Right, so there's a number of different ways you can get these files on Origin. So we've shown Shaper Hub. So that's either Shaper staff or the community have uploaded files, and they're available for you to search, drop on your Origin immediately, and cut. Now there's if you've got something unique you want to do on your own, we're going to walk you through some of the techniques for how you would take either the PDF, the SVG, DXF, or even just the physical object and scan it. So let's see here. We've got this is showing basically a flatbed scanner of another piece of hardware here. And if we can see that there. This is a, what is it, My V80K, I believe it is. So this is designed for a chair leg, a table leg, sorry, that can be disassembled, and this goes in the underside of the table, and then there's this little attachment that fits over it and secures the leg on. So it's designed for an 80mm leg. They have a range of different ones, but yeah, I'll walk you through the process of creating one of these from a scan. So we'll switch to my screen here, Noah. Sorry, my computer screen. Cool. So we are looking at This has come straight off a flatbed scanner, so they can be bought for like what, $70 to $100, and I've just scanned it in black and white, or sorry, grayscale at 300 dpi. And what's special about this compared to if you were to say take a photo, this is dead flat and we get the scale, so there's no weird optical distortion. This is 100% square and the scale is right. When I say 100% square, the way I placed it down here can end up rotated a little bit. So I'm in a package called Adobe Illustrator. This is a 2D vector editing package, and it's a great way to manipulate these files. Obviously the same process could work in other packages, but for this one we'll just run through it here. So first up, we notice I'll show you me placing the file, or actually so I'll just open, find my scan. It's all right. It's already open, so we'll do it again. And this is what we see. So the cool thing here is, oh, weird. I might need to, oh no, it's just a bit of lag there, sorry. The cool thing here is I can now quickly measure this and confirm a couple of things. So first off, I want to confirm my angle is correct. So at the moment there's a little angle in it, and if you can see my mouse, click here and then click here, it's going to tell me what that angle is. So this is the info panel. If you're ever confused about any of these panels, they're all under here named. So just look for the name at the top, and under window you'll find info. So that one's visible, and this is giving a little readout of what that angle is. So I've measured this is 2.041 degrees. So now all we need to do to cancel out that rotation or make things simple to work on is select it, and actually we just select it and go enter, and we type in the opposite, negative 0.2041. Sorry, negative 2.041, and then we can tell it to preview that. You have to refresh it sometimes, and it should rotate. Oh, sorry, I had the wrong thing selected. Do that again. Negative 2.041. Right, so that's perfectly aligned. We'll accept that. Oops. So now we can see that that's now dead straight. So I can turn on, under view, I can show rulers. There's actually a shortcut for this, which is Control R, and now we can just drag these down and we can confirm that that is nice and straight. So you can see these blue lines enable me to quickly see. I'm just dragging from the ruler itself out across the tool here, and then that gets me my dimensions. This one actually happened to be a little bit low. You'll notice that guides are actually they're not selectable by default. So you go View, Guides, Unlock Guides. So I can then just move that up there until I'm happy with it. And then this is my Layers menu. So this shows me all the elements in my file. So each guide gets its own layer. I'm going to lock this one. That's the image itself. Otherwise it's very easy to click and drag the image around. So we're getting everything pretty firmed up here. Now it's just similar to what I was doing on tools. So I'm just going to click and drag here, and so this is a rectangle I've dragged, and you'll notice the dimensions are the same, and then I just type in the corner radius. Obviously we can measure that with Calipers. Assume I'm doing that off screen. I know it's 6 millimeters, so type in 6 millimeters. You can mix up units here as well. So with that done, I can actually delete my raster image. So that's not a vector image. This is why we're tracing that. And then I can say I want this to be an inside cut. So we'll just hit the default settings, which is the stroke is black and the fill is white. And that is now readily available for cutting on Origin. So I can just go Object, Artboard. I'm going to make it fit to artwork bounds, or fit to selected bounds, sorry. And now we'll see the only element we're saving out is the actual shape we want there. I'm going to delete the image as well, and now that's ready for cutting with Origin. The save settings, we'll just put it in here. My VADK, and then we choose SVG. Save. These settings, the specifics of the settings are all saved on the support site. Ted will link to that. And this just means that Origin can then read this file and cut it immediately in exactly the same way as Sean showed dropping a file on his Shaper Hub. I'll do that here. So this is my Shaper Hub, and then I just go upload file. I put it in scans, my V80K, okay, and then that instantly transfers to the tool and is available for cutting. So it's that simple to make stuff from a scan. You can also, Noah, if you can go to the slides and we'll have a look at the other ones there. Up a couple, or back a couple, sorry. So previous, previous two more. Yeah, so another option is with a lot of this hardware being designed with CNC in mind, companies are starting to release their full 3D CAD models, but also they will output this one, for example, as it Hefele. Sorry if I've butchered the pronunciation. That's that little oval latch we were looking at. They've actually got the full 3D file and the and 2D drawings as well. So that can be saved out as PDFs, SVGs, you name it. So we'll cut back to my screen again, Noah, and we'll walk you through the process of taking that file and saving it out. So you'll notice down here there's this section called Save Cad Data. So I found this is on the Hefele US site. I found the thing I want to cut. Click on the CAD data. For this, we actually don't need it to be crazy heavy, fully 3D. We just want the 2D. So in 2D, you'll notice there's all these different formats. Illustrator will let you open DXF, PDF, and SVG. Keep in mind, some of these other ones are actually not vector files. So SVG, PDF, DXF, that'll work. So, I mean, it's got SVG, so why not use that? And then we just download it. I'll cancel this because I've already got it downloaded. And then we'll have a look at what that file looks like. So it's not a slam dunk in that file as it stands is not immediately cuttable. So you still have to go via an application like Illustrator here. So I've got it open, but we'll close that. How are we looking for time, Noah? Okay. You just tell me when we switch to... okay. So I'll grab the front image. So this is actually a great way. What I'm showing you here is appropriate for all vector editing apps. So I'm just opening that SVG I downloaded, and we'll see the type of thing we see here. So the same principle you would use in any app. Also, you would use it across PDFs, DXFs, SVGs. Basically, if you find geometry in a weird file format that's not, from Shaper Hub, where it's obviously tuned up, ready for cutting with Origin, this is the process you would go through to preparing it. So the first thing we notice, I often look through the layers menu, is clipping info, which is unnecessary. So the key is to just delete stuff. Delete stuff and make sure we have it visually the same. You often end up with cruft like callouts for dimensions. There might be raster images. There's these clipping masks. It was in the slide, so just pause on that slide. There's a bunch of things to look out for. So I'm just basically going through, getting rid of anything that's unnecessary. Now we see the horrors of this thing. So all of these little pieces, like it looks like one big smooth oval, but there's actually a huge number of just weird little facety bits. So I'll show you how to resolve that. All we need is this outside dimension, and all the rest of it is redundant. So I'm going to blow away all the center data. I've gone from the select tool to the direct select tool. So this enables me to select individual components inside a group. So all of the stuff in the middle, I do not need it. So once again, hitting delete. It's similar to dragging to the trash down here in the layers menu, which we were just doing. Now we see we've got visually what we want, but the way it's structured is all wrong. So I don't want, thousands of little individual lines. Each one of these elements is another piece of this. So what I'm going to do is select it all, and then we'll use a tool in here called Shape Builder. So that's this one here. And now with those selected, you'll see it's found a closed shape. You'll notice as I hover over it, it says, hey, do you want to take all those elements and turn it into one element? So I just literally just click on it, and it does it for me. So now I have one object over here. That's the goal in your layers menu, is to just confirm you've got one object and that there's no weird little appearance treatments on these this dot here. So I'll show you what that means. And then I want to make it an inside cut, and I quickly want to check the dimensions are correct. So I've got a height of 10 inches and a width of 6 inches. So that is not correct. So just double check your actual dimensions you want. I'm going to constrain those two so that when I edit this to height of 60 millimeters, it proportionally comes along for the ride. And then if I actually want to view this whole project as a millimeters project, I can go Document Setup and change from inches to millimeters. So then I'll get a readout, okay, 38 and 60. That is exactly as it was. I will not go through the motion of creating the rectangle for this, but it's basically the same process as we were seeing on Origin. Oh, actually, I will. I'm using guides once again, dragging them down and snapping to these center points, and then I can do my rectangle snapping. See how it's just highlighting as it snaps over those points to the center. And then if I click and drag, on Mac it might be different. If you hold down Alt, oops, it dropped when it did that. So it says intersect, that means it's dead center. Click and drag, hold down Alt. Now I'm doing a proportional based on that center. I don't need to get it dead right because I'm actually going to change it up here with my transform tools. So I make sure my anchor point is zeroed, and I just want to set my width to be 20 and my height to be, what was that? Oh, I'll have to, you'll notice this updated because I'm proportionally editing it. And then that is 47 or 48 works. So that's now, that has no fill and stroke, so I need to make that an inside cut, which is black stroke and a white fill. So that's now ready to cut as well. I'll do one last thing. Object, change my artboard. The artboard's just this big white area here, and basically if we were to see this on Origin in your menu or your import list, the icon would be this huge area. So I'm just going to crop it down so that the icon looks like that. So now that is ready to cut with Origin. And I'll just add a little V2 to it. And we can do the exact same thing, copying that over to Origin, and it will cut the same way as the one we cut that was made on Tool. One last...
So Sam,
yeah, what's that, John?
yeah, Sam, I was saying, so that's kind of the second way to create stuff from the internet when you're using actual CAD data from the manufacturer. I think there's one more we want to go over quickly, which Sam has an awesome video online, so we won't take too much time, but maybe, Sam, you can go over that last way to do this.
Yeah, if you were to maybe take a shot from the top here, Noah, it'll almost look correct. So this is from a photo. What did we do? We did scan file, and then photo. Yeah. So keep in mind a photo is going to be distorted. There's like lens distortion, which will make it not dead flat the way it looked in the scan. But I can, hold my camera up here. I try to get dead straight above it. It's great to have some shaper tape in the background. That's a good scale reference, or maybe a ruler or something, and take a photo from straight above it. And then I can then bring it into any one of these vector editing apps and literally trace that. So keep in mind the tolerances, they're not going to compete with either drafting it up from the working drawings or a scan. This is, we use this as an example for like our shadow foam, like doing a toolkit. So here's the, we do a little run through. This program's called Vector. It's actually VECTR. This tutorial that you're seeing, and it's like a free thing. You can just log into the web page, create, drop in your image, create the file, save out the SVG, and drop that on Origin for free. So yeah, definitely check that one out. That's a good, if you're not as like hypercritical about these tiny thousandth of an inch tolerances, definitely give that a look. Do you have like 5 minutes left, Noah?
Yeah, I wanted to also say one other thing. If you're like Sam and you know these 2D programs, there's something that come naturally to you and you can really crank stuff through. That's a great way to create this. But if you may be saying, I've never actually used vector software, I don't know anything about that. We actually have a thing called Shaper Assist, and it's actually a thing that will, you give us kind of the file you need. Maybe it's a hardware insert or a hinge that you install all the time. We'll build a file for you. We give you a nice, you kind of send us what you want. We give you a quote, and then we will produce it for you. You don't have to worry about any of the software for building the files. You'll just get the actual file delivered to your Origin over Shaper Hub. So,
yeah, that's a great way of, if all this sounds a little bit tedious, you don't feel like rolling your sleeves up and getting into the vector editing. Assist's a great way of getting literally any project up and running. And you can start off with, just a napkin sketch, or send along, part numbers of different hardware that you want to work with. And we can get that set up for you, ready to go. And there's obviously a sort of value in the consultation along the way in terms of like what cutter to use, and then thinking about how to actually fixture things and fabricate it versus just you're not just left on your own with like, there's your file, best of luck. There's support throughout the whole process to make sure you get a good outcome. So then, the one other thing I'd like to go through is, let's say you have this file on your tool, and then you've decided you've cut one table, works great. Now you want to scale this process up. Like how does Origin still play a role when you're doing a volume run? And that is where templates come in. So I'm going to show you a quick way of taking the Origin cut file, so just the file that would be the pocket for this, and then creating a template that makes sure that it's precisely aligned where you want it. And then you can, with a regular hand router, index this on the edge. No, you might be able to see here. I think most people will be familiar with templates, but this has just got little nylon pins that we've installed, all on Origin, so no computer. And then that makes sure that we're perfectly aligned every time you would do your little pattern bit and get a perfect outcome. So that'll speed up a process when you're doing, you know, more than a modest number. So I'll get Origin back over here, and I'll do one more grid. Look at my screen now. So I'll just kick off another grid using that same shortcut. So I'm just placing a grid arbitrarily somewhere, but I need the grid to align all the different elements of this process. So I just accept my depth, double click. It's, I would say, usually a very good idea to kick off any project with a grid, unless it's totally organically placed elements. This means that you can come back and get exactly the same position every time. So I'm going to import the file that is the pocket, and that is, so I've actually got a full template here, but this is the one we're after. Now I'm in inches here. I'm going to turn my whole machine to millimeters for this one, just to simplify things. So I've gone to the settings menu up in the top right corner there, and we'll just hit millimeters. So now everything I see will be in millimeters. What's cool here is I know that this is designed for an 80 millimeter leg, so I can modify my grid and set the increments to 40 millimeters. So now you'll see, hopefully you can see on the screen, the dotted line is now at 40 millimeter increments, and you'll see that updating in the top as I move around. It's snapping to these 40 millimeter increment locations. So now I'll import my file again, and it will snap directly relative to my origin, which is at 0, 0. My 80 millimeter leg would fit around there, perfectly located. So zoom out a bit. So that looks good. So relative to this shape, we're going to cut exactly what we want. So now the key is to go in and create some circles. I'm going to first keep in mind that this grid, we'll change this increment again. This grid is available for adjusting. We can modify these increments so the orientation and the position of the grid remains unchanged, but the so now you'll see there's more increments, but the increments change. So this is a great way of placing variable elements. So then I'll just quickly go through this. I'm sure we're running out of time. My nylon pins are 0.25 inches. Once again, awesome to be able to mix and match in the field units. So, you know, metric and inch hardware all comes together seamlessly. Now I've changed my anchor point to be top instead of centered. So that means the top of this is at 0, and that will get me the perfect offset for this file. So we'll do another one here. I can actually copy this as well. So placing it at 0. Notice this one's centered in the middle, top. And then same again, copy. And we'll do this one on the right. So you'll see that means the index line is perfectly aligned with 0 on this grid. And then we'll cut the whole thing out with a rectangle. So we'll just make that, say, 160 by 160. And then I can actually center that one as well, and we'll just center it on at 40 by 40. There we go. So now that's my template. I could round the corners if I'm feeling fancy. 10 millimeters. Cut that out. So I don't need all this internal detail. I would just cut the inside of this at 0. Now this is where things get really interesting. So let's say I've cut this out at exactly 0. That's perfect for a kind of a flush pattern bit. But if I'm using a following bit with an offset, potentially this project's dead in the water. But the cool thing with Origin is we can actually put that offset in. So if it's a 0.125 inch offset and we make it negative, you'll see now we've offset by that much, meaning when we use the following bit with that offset baked into it, we can actually cut that out. So that was a bit of a rush at the end there. We can go into that in more detail, maybe in the community or something, given we won't have time to actually cut it out. But you can see there, we effectively created this from just the pocket, meaning that then we can take our trim router and continue to be productive on a job site or wherever we are without ever touching a computer, just by thinking through the process, utilizing offsets and gridding. Yeah, that's that process. So
yeah, I think, Sam, the only other thing to go through really quickly is on Shaper Hub, the jigs and fixtures. So of course you can build your own, but there's also a bunch of jigs and fixtures that we've already built internally and in the community to do the specific types of hardware installs. For instance, this is one of the ones that we have built recently, which is for doing larger door hinges, like a Tectus hinge or something bigger for really heavy doors, where you build this jig and clamp this onto the door on both sides and cut inside of this little area, which is kind of planned. So you get a perfect 90 when you build a jig. But a lot of these kind of jigs and fixtures are already on Shaper Hub, and you can just add them to your Shaper Hub and build them and be on and going. So something to be aware of.
This is obviously just a surface level intro to hardware installation with Origin. There's a lot more to it than this. Yeah, reach out to us on the community and chat with the rest of the community about how your workflows are working. And we're always interested in how Origin's being used and what the big wins are and what's frustrating, how we can help make things more efficient, faster, and more pleasant to use.